3 months that I've known you now that I think you would be I had it pulled up somewhere. Poor communication skills, best practice interpersonal and assertive communication skills.
I'm not assertive enough for you.
I just think it would be a great management. And then essential leadership skills for frontline managers and supervisors. Have you taken that?
Mm-mm.
I recommend it to every single supervisor that I know. In
Okay.
fact, I'm going to make all of my superintendents go. They're being forced. They don't have a choice. You have a choice after January.
I have a choice after January. Okay. Well, I would love to learn how to do my job better. So if you wouldn't mind sending me that information, I will look into it.
I will 100% send it to you. And if you want, you can take the effective business writing skills.
I don't think I'm that bad.
They're not. That's kind of a dig on somebody else.
I know. Did you notice the big smile on my face? I took it for what it was. But that doesn't mean I can't poke back.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, good Lord. Okay, yep, no, I know where I'm at now. All right, that's good.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The time is now 7:30, and this November 22nd meeting of the City Council is hereby called to order. Would you all please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And will the clerk please call roll?
McHale.
Here.
Budmatz.
Present.
O'Brien.
Here.
Veneziano.
Here.
Assessi.
Here.
Reyes is absent. Sonoyka.
Here.
With 6 present and 1 absent, there is a quorum this evening. Therefore, members of the audience, you're reminded that these proceedings are being recorded for current and future broadcasts over the city's cable television channel, as well as other media platforms. Looks like the first order of business we have is to approve minutes from a previous meeting, and the minutes requiring approval are from the City Council meeting on November 8th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the set of minutes?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman O'Brien, for the second. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to this set of minutes? Okay, seeing none, the question is, shall the minutes be approved? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Nothing for the mayor to report this evening. Are there any ward reports? Alderman Sonoyka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Thursday, both myself and the Deputy City Clerk, Judy Bross, met with several residents in Ward 7 and others and other wards as well regarding the chicken and hen license experience. And overall, it was very productive with a lot of feedback. So thank you to everyone who came out in person in City Hall on Thursday, and for all of those who emailed and called me. I'm looking forward to presenting a formal report to the council on how that project has gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Looking forward to that. Any other ward reports this evening? Okay, if no further ward reports. We'll also note that there are no signatures on the public sign-in sheet. So this will bring us to items pending for second reading. Beginning with the first item pending, line item A, it's ordinance number 22-48 to approve property tax levy abatement. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance? Thank you, Alderman Budmatz, for the first. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman McHale, for the second. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Seeing none, the question is, shall the ordinance be adopted? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Assessi.
Here. Oh, yes.
Sonoyka.
Yes.
McHale.
Yes.
Budmatz.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Veneziano.
Yes.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, this ordinance is adopted. This brings us to the second line item B, ordinance number 22-49. It's to approve property tax levy for the city of Rolling Meadows. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman O'Brien, for the first. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka, for the second. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Alderman O'Brien.
Just, as I've said before, I'm in support of the 1%. I do have concerns for the longer-term sustainability, but I know staff is taking a look at that for us in 2023, since we're purposefully spending down some of the funds. So no, I'm in support of the 1%, but just had some caution about the future and how we'll make sure we cover at least our costs with everything going up. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, the question is, shall the ordinance be adopted? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sunoika?
Yes.
McHale?
Yes.
Bud Matts?
Yes.
O'Brien?
Yes.
Veneziano?
Yes.
Bessesi?
Yes.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, this ordinance is adopted. This brings us to line item C, ordinance number 22-50, and it's to approve the property tax levy for the Rolling Meadows Library. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman McHale, for the second. Any discussion on this ordinance? Seeing none, the question is, shall the ordinance be adopted? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sunoika?
Yes.
McHale?
Yes.
Bud Matts?
Yes.
O'Brien?
Yes.
Veneziano?
Yes.
Bessesi?
Yes.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, this ordinance is adopted. This brings us to line item D, ordinance number 22-51, and that's approving the disposal of city property and equipment. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Veneziano, for the second. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Okay, seeing none, the question is, shall the ordinance be adopted? Will the clerk please call the roll?
McHale?
Yes.
Bud Matts?
Yes.
O'Brien?
Yes.
Veneziano?
Yes.
Bessesi?
Yes.
Sunoika?
Yes.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, this ordinance is adopted. This brings us to line item E, ordinance number 22-52, and that's to amend the City of Rolling Meadows Code related to property tax incentive applications. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka.
Second.
Thank you, Alderman McHale, for the second. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Seeing none, the question is, shall the ordinance be adopted? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bud Matts?
Yes.
O'Brien?
Yes.
Veneziano?
Yes.
Bessesi?
Yes.
Sunoika?
Yes.
McHale?
Yes.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, this ordinance is adopted. Next, we have line item F, ordinance number 22-53, and that's to amend the alcohol liquor code to approve a Class GA liquor license for video gaming for Anna's Red Apple LLC, doing business as Anna's Red Apple at 2121 Plum Grove Road. Is there a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman McHale. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka, for the second. Is there any discussion on this item? Alderman Bud Matts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may recall at the last meeting I asked if we could, that I would be voting for it pending the report of the existing the existing licensees and how they were doing with following the rules. And we had put in place penalties because we were aware that there were people who weren't following the rules. One of the reports that came back told us that one of the licensees was not following the rules. That's the same exact applicant as the person who's applying tonight, Anthony Donato. And so at this point, seeing that Mr. Donato, again, is in violation, and he's the person who's responsible for signing the application and following the rules at both Isabella's and then, if passed, Anna's Red Apple. I would like to propose that we table item number F for a period of time of not less than 90 days or longer if Anna's Red Apple, if Isabella's can't come into compliance, because at this point, I understand they're two different corporations, but it's the same applicant, and if the applicant can't get his act together at location A, I have no reason to believe that he's magically going to perform great at location B, and it's insulting to this body. I mean, the fact is that we were open about wanting him to comply, that we were open about that there was going to be an inspection, and staff went there and were told that they don't serve food at that location. So I think it's a joke that we would even for a second consider this application. So I'm going to ask that we amend this or table this for a period of time of not less than 90 days.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion to table this for, you say, not less than 90 days?
Not less than 90 days after such time as the applicant's other location is in compliance and demonstrates that they're following the rules at that time. And if 90 days have passed and they're really complying, then I'd be more than happy to consider this motion again.
Okay. Alderman Sunoika?
I would like to add my support to this. I would like to see some consistent and sustained improvement with that particular location, and we'll need at least 90 days to demonstrate that pattern that exists.
Okay. Any further discussion on this item, on the motion that's on the floor? Okay, if not, then I'll ask for the clerk to call a roll on this motion to table this for no less than 90 days to see if they can come into compliance at their first location.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Veneziano.
Yes.
Bessetti.
Yes.
Sunoika.
Yes.
McHale.
Yes.
Bud Matts.
Yes.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, this will be tabled. This brings us to the next item or set of items on our agenda, which are the consent ordinances in for first reading. And this consists of 3 items, and those are items G through I. Does any alderman wish to remove an item from the consent agenda for ordinances? Alderman Bud Matts?
Yes, item number H.
H. Okay. Any other alderman wish to remove any item? Okay, seeing no further items moved, the chair declares it in order for one motion to consider the 2 ordinances in a single motion without debate. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman Sunoika. Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you, Alderman Veneziano, for the second. So beginning with the first line item G, ordinance number 22-00 at this time. It's to amend section 122-3631 of the zoning code and section 78-27 of the city code in order to reduce the number of members of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the city of Rolling Meadows. The second line item I, ordinance number 22-00 at this time, is approval of the City of Rolling Meadows compensation plan for fiscal year 2023. The question is, shall the 2 ordinances be moved forward for second reading? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Veneziano.
Yes.
Bessetti.
Yes.
Sunoika.
Yes.
McHale.
Yes.
Bud Matts.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, those ordinances will be moved forward for second reading. This brings us back to line item H, ordinance number 22-00 at this time. It's to amend the City of Rolling Meadows zoning code of ordinances to define and regulate tobacco, vape, and CBD shops as permitted uses in the C1 and C2 zoning districts. Is there a motion to move this forward for second reading?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Veneziano, for the second. Alderman Bud Matts, you pulled this. You were entitled to the first set of
Thank you, Mr.
remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received numerous calls from residents about the proliferation of vape shops in Rolling Meadows, and not all of that feedback has been positive. And so it seems that there's been an influx in the number of applications, and so I agree with the plan, but to help regulate the number of vape shops, I think rather than having it be a permitted use, I'd like to see if it's be a special use. That way, we would have to, as a council, agree to have these locations wherever they are for vape shops, and the rest of it, the 2,000 feet, the whole 9 yards. Those are great. Those are great guidelines for us to think about and follow. But I'd like to see it as a special use moving forward. I mean, we use tattoo shops have a special use, et cetera. So I'd really like to see us use vape shops as a special use as well. So I don't know if that has to be an amendment or how we would do it or rewrite it or whatever.
Well, for now, you're requesting an amendment to
Yep.
this proposal here as an ordinance, and then asking our attorney as far as the steps and procedures.
So, because this would be required to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a public hearing on this, because it would be an amendment to create this use as a special use. So the motion would be to direct this back to Planning and Zoning for consideration of this use as a special use, and the text amendments associated with the same.
Okay?
Is there a second to Alderman Budmats, or first Alderman Bessetti, if you have a question, or were you going to support
It was
this?
just, I'm going to support it, but I
Okay.
also have a,
Let me just put a second out there. I think Alderman Sonoyka was going to make the second on this, and then Alderman Bessetti, go ahead and deliver your remarks on your support.
I'm totally in support of Alderman Budmats' amendment. Another thing that I would like to see with this is some sort of a distance away from schools. Because, I mean, you're talking Plum Grove Road, they're walking right down from the junior high, pick up their vape stuff, head back to school. Same with the high school, that type of stuff. So I know it's not part of this particular amendment, but somewhere down the road, I'd like to see us do something to try and prevent the distance from schools.
So if I can ask Attorney Wolf, with this point, we have the amendment on the floor to bring this back to planning and zoning for their consideration. Where should we fit in Alderman Bessetti's request in that?
That doesn't need to be attached to the motion, but the planning and zoning and staff could consider that recommendation as a condition that can be associated with a special use.
Okay, so in that time, Alderman Bessetti, we can deliver additional recommendations
sense.
while it goes back
Yes.
to. Okay. Any other discussion on? Is your hand
A
up,
quick
Alderman
question.
Budmats?
A quick question. So, if there are applications in house right now for vape shops, would we be able to put a moratorium on passing those until we finish what we're doing here, or is that, would I have to make that part of the amendment, or how would that work?
At this time, the way the zoning code stands, any applications on file would have required this zoning amendment, so they would not be permitted. Right. And maybe Elizabeth could contribute to that, because I think we did have something that was in the works, and the whole purpose of this, bringing this forward to the city council, was to allow that to go through.
Elizabeth, is there any applicants in the queue in the Community Development Department?
Yes, I have one application firmly on my desk. This amendment as written would allow that one. I do have another inquiry, firm inquiry from Phillips Edison at the Rolling Meadows Shopping Center down the road here. And I've gotten several calls since about locating tobacco, vape, and CBD shops in the city. So there is high interest.
Okay, so if there is high interest and there is currently one in the queue, so to speak, to Alderman Budmats' point, would they then be in a holding pattern until this is concluded?
Yes, I don't believe a moratorium would be necessary, because our zoning code would not allow for those applications to be processed. And so until such time that either a permitted use was established or a special use process was established for these types of uses, they wouldn't be going through or getting approved.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Budmats. Alderman O'Brien?
I was just going to say, I'm not sure if I agree or disagree with Alderman Bessetti's point yet, because obviously they sell alcohol. But my thought was, I know these are standalone, and this is probably just for future consideration since we're going to bring it back to us. If this does go forward at a future reading, would that also impact non-standalone that sell these? Like, because I think the Jewel sells them, some gas stations do as well, and they're well within limits of schools. So I don't know, and I would defer to Attorney Wolf or Elizabeth, not for now, but when it comes back to us, if it was to move forward in Alderman Bessetti's potential thought, if that would put us at any additional exposure from current establishments that aren't standalone that sell these within distances of a school. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman O'Brien. Appreciate that. Alderman Sonoyka?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question for city staff, and either this goes maybe to the city, the city manager or community development. What, with so much interest in this, what would we anticipate for staff when it comes to resources to process these special uses for the city?
I'll defer to Interim Superintendent of Community Development, Elizabeth.
Okay.
Thank you, City Manager Sabo. The part of the reason that we decided to go the route of the permitted use to start with was firstly to streamline the process for these applicants and give staff that leeway. And secondly, what we had in mind was exactly what Alderman O'Brien, I believe, said. They're similar to liquor stores, and there's no special use requirement for liquor stores as it stands currently. If this was to require special use, it would be the same amount of time, process, energy, and money for both the potential petitioner as well as staff. These processes, depending on the qualities of the submittal, can run as little as 60 days and sometimes longer. Generally speaking, we say 60 to 90. Sometimes it's a little bit longer, up to 120.
So, given that increased amount of the resources required from city staff regarding these particular special uses, is there any other advantage to doing a special use versus a permitted use for the council, other than ultimately council would have final say for the special use?
With the guidelines that staff has recommended, I would say no. The distance requirements, as we have presented them, severely limit the number of tobacco, vape, and CBD shops that are available within the city of Rolling Meadows. There would really only be one location, which is the application that I have on file that, per my analysis and the maps you can see in the staff report, only one other location that would be able to meet those requirements rather than having to ask for a variance from them.
May I add one quick note on that as well? The special use process allows the council to review the application in totality and to review the proposed use and the location. Maybe one proposed type of business of this sort is different than another. And so in those circumstances, as they vary and are unique, that's where a special use process can be beneficial. One additional consideration that the council may want to take into account as this is directed back to the PZC is to both, if the desire is to move forward with the special use, to recommend the special use as well as the distance boundaries, because the boundaries themselves can also exist in our code at the same time as the special use requirement. So what that will do is it'll offer that additional level of protection on the number that can exist in the community, thereby reducing the number of special uses that we will be processing to begin with.
So then to clarify, because how I would envision this is it sounds like Alderman Budmatz is in favor of the regulations that are proposed here in addition to this being a special use. So whether this is a permitted use or a special use, we are still in favor as a council, based off of this discussion, of those additional requirements, including the distancing and other items proposed in this ordinance. So what I want to clarify here with the council is if we're still going to eventually come to the same outcome, which is essentially a controlled review of these particular establishments, whether it's a permitted use or a special use, I think I would be in favor of the permitted use because it would still have that same effect, but using less resources. So that's something that I would like the council to consider when this comes back to us after the Planning and Zoning Committee reviews our recommendations tonight.
And in light of that, with this motion that's on the floor, if that makes sense, you can vote this down and revert back to the original as permitted use, but the vote is ultimately yours. Any other discussion on this request? Okay, with no additional discussion on this request, and again, we're voting now on pushing this back to Planning and Zoning for their review to see if they concur that it should be special use versus the permitted use we have on the floor now. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bessesi.
Yes.
Sunoika.
No.
McHale. No. Budmatz.
Yes.
O'Brien.
Yes.
Veneziano.
No.
That's 3 and 3 here. Is this my turn? Oh, boy. Ultimately, it's going to come back to the city council in either form, as Alderman Sunoika stated. And at that time, it is the council's discretion to give the go, no go. And so rather than kick this back to the Planning and Zoning Committee, I believe that any applicant that comes before us, we can make that individual decision. And I believe that that would be appropriate at that time. So I would vote no to turn this back to Planning and Zoning Committee. And so for that, that motion does not pass, and we're back to the original ordinance as written. Any discussion on this original ordinance as written? Alderman
A question.
Budmets?
Yeah, so because it was never a permitted use before, that's why we never seen any of these applications? And so if, amongst the things that we will be able to discuss with an applicant and a permitted use is that we don't have a proliferation of glassware in the front window of their establishment, is that something that we would be able to do under permitted use that we'd like to limit that?
Manager Sabo will answer those questions. Alderman Budmets.
So if this is a permitted use, in other words, a by right use within a distance boundary, that without the special use process would not come before the council. Would be handled via a building permit and a zoning review by the building, by our building staff. Right. So if this is something that the council wishes to have come before the council to review, the special use process is the mechanism by which that can happen.
Wait a minute. So if an applicant wants to erect a vape shop and permitted use, you're telling me it will not come before the council to make the decision?
Correct. That's the way the code is currently written. And the recommendation here was to reduce the number that would be allowed to exist within the community. The recommendation that Alderman Budmets had made was to modify the code to create that special use approach, which in that case, the applicant would have to appear before the PZC, and then with a recommendation thereafter come to the city council, and then the council would then have an opportunity to review and consider that use.
So then I was under the wrong assumption, assuming that the applicant was having to come back to the council regardless, based on what I was hearing before. So do you want to jump in, Attorney Wolf?
Yes, and if you would like to change your vote, it's
Yeah,
not
I
too
absolutely
late to
would.
do it.
I was under the assumption we would. So then I will vote with
Yes.
yes on that, so make that 4 and 3. Thanks for the clarification. Okay, well then we don't have to go back to the original ordinance because it's now kicked back to planning and zoning. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Mayor Gallo. I would like to just make sure that when I bring this before the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'm very clear in what I'm bringing to them. So what I'm bringing to them is the regulations as proposed, modified into making it a special use. Are we looking to add in any kind of a distance requirement to sensitive uses, schools, churches, et cetera?
Apparently it sounds like there are certain recommendations. Alderman Budmats had brought one up about his the distaste for having glass paraphernalia in the front windows. So I think if the council has additional recommendations, that they should send them to Elizabeth and have those available. And if she does not receive them, then there is nothing she can do about that. So please submit any additional recommendations that you guys want to include for the Planning and Zoning Committee to cover. Will that help?
Yes, it would be helpful to have that in writing so that I can refer back.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, then now.
Mayor Gill.
Yes.
Quick question, Attorney Wolf, I'm trying to kind of compare. So special use for this, could we compare this to something similar to like our gaming license? Like an open, like we close our license after, we have 12 and that's it. We only have 12. One comes in, they apply, we grant it, now we have 13 and then it's closed. Is this something similar as to what we can do with their license? Or is that a different kind of license that they apply for? I don't even know. Is it just a regular business license? I have no idea.
It's a special use permit. So you could limit the number of special use permits associated with this type of establishment. But as Manager Sabo brought up, the distance requirements and maybe the other regulations that would be applicable to the special use could establish that limitation because there would be only so many areas and only so many locations. But that is something that can be considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Measures to limit, if it's not an outright limitation on the number of special use permits associated with this use.
Okay. And so when they file for a license, is it the same business license as everyone else in our community?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Eventually, yes. They will need to get a business license through community development. When someone applies for a business license, it comes through a zoning review, and at that time, unless they've called ahead and know that they need to go through this process, they'll be told that this isn't a permitted use. You have to go through the special use process. But ultimately, yes, it's the same kind of business license as anyone else would get in the end once they're approved through the process.
Can I follow up with a question to the
This-
mayor?
This will be your second bite, so yeah.
Is that very typical in other communities, that the nature of these businesses that are, I guess, your typical license, that they're not regulated, monitored? I mean, we have other businesses in our community that sell liquor, and they need a liquor license. They're monitored by our police. There's background checks. You know, do they follow the rules and regulations and laws and, you know, through state? You know, I guess I'm a little alarmed if they're just getting regular license and they could be selling vapors to 15-year-olds if we don't know they follow the rules. I guess I'm like having a oh my goodness moment here.
So our in the city code, there is a cigarette and tobacco dealer's license, which is the license that's affixed as part of the business licensing process. To assure that the dealers are adhering to the law, the police department does inspect and does go into our tobacco dealer locations to conduct essentially stings to ensure that those tobacco sellers are following the law and that they aren't selling to minors. So we are going through those processes. There are actually state grants and funds that provide the resources to be able to do that. So we do actively, on an annual basis, go through and do conduct those kind of stings. As far as the tobacco licensing, the process, at least, we haven't done an analysis at large, but based on my professional experience, the tobacco licensing has not been handled in the same way that liquor licensing has, given that tobacco products are sold at the point of sale, and it's a present your ID, validate that you're 18 and able to purchase the product. There's no on-site consumption happening, so it's handled a little bit differently in other communities. That's not to say it can't be done in a more robust process here. However, it hasn't been here done in the way that a liquor license is done. So on a liquor license, an individual applies, a background check is performed. In a tobacco license, that isn't the same approach.
Thank you, Alderman Veneziano. All right, that'll move us on to the next item, which is new business, line item J, and that's a motion to approve payment of bills on warrant for November 22nd, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the warrant?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman McHale, for the second. Is there any discussion for the bills on warrant? Seeing none, the question is, shall the warrant be approved? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sunoika?
Yes.
McHale?
Yes.
Bud Matts?
Yes.
O'Brien?
Yes.
Veneziano?
Yes.
Bessesi?
Yes.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, the warrant is approved. This brings us to our next item on the agenda, which are the consent resolutions. And this consists of 5 items, and those are items K through O. Does any alderman wish to remove any items from the consent agenda for resolutions? Okay, seeing none, the chair declares it in order for one motion to consider the 5 resolutions in a single motion without debate. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman Sonoyka. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman McHale, for the second. We'll begin with line item K, resolution number 22-R-102, and that's to acknowledge and accept the fiscal year 2023 Rolling Meadows Library budget. Line item L, resolution number 22-R-103, is to adopt the fiscal year 2023 City of Rolling Meadows budget. Line item M, resolution number 22-R-104, is to approve the retainment of closed session minutes and recordings. Resolution number 22-R-105 is to authorize the purchase of de-icing materials from Crystal Vision, Inc. for the 2022-2023 winter season in a not-to-exceed amount of $34,452. In line item O, resolution number 22-R-106 is to authorize the 3 sanitary sewer point repairs in accordance with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District in an amount of $79,571 from Archon Construction Corporation, Inc. The question is, shall the five resolutions be adopted? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sunoika?
Yes.
McHale?
Yes.
Budmats?
Yes.
O'Brien?
Yes.
Veneziano?
Yes.
Bessesi?
Yes.
With 6 in favor and none opposed, the resolutions are adopted. This brings us to other business and reports. I do not have any appointments, nor do I have any proclamations, and the city clerk has something to report.
I do, finally. In the packet, you'll find the list of 2023 meeting dates, and they will be published in accordance with the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you. This will move us on to city staff reports. And just a reminder, no discussions during the staff reports, but this will bring us to the first item, which are our community items of interest. And for this, we'll defer to Manager Sabo.
Thank you, Mayor Gallo. The 2022 Toys for Tots collection runs through December 16th. New unwrapped toys can be dropped off at Rolling Meadows City Hall and the Rolling Meadows Public Library in order to be donated to local families in need during this holiday season. The city's annual holiday celebration will be held on Thursday, December 1st at 6 p.m. Ring in the seasonal spirit with festive songs, Santa Claus, live reindeer, horse-drawn wagon rides, hot cocoa, goodies, and the lighting of the city's holiday tree. The event will be held on the property of the city's historical museum at 3100 Central Road, which will be open for visitors to enjoy tokens from the city's past along with festive retro decor. Curious about the history of Rolling Meadows? Join the Rolling Meadows Historical Society's special presentation from Esther Perica, author of the 1979 book, They Took the Challenge, The Story of Rolling Meadows. Esther will share her story and answer questions about Rolling Meadows' life through the decades on Sunday, December 4th at 2 p.m. at the Rolling Meadows Library in the Community Room. For more information, please contact the Historical Society at 847-577-7086. The Rolling Meadows Police Department will be holding their annual holiday food drive on Saturday, December 3rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Rolling Meadows Jewel Osco parking lot on Kirchhoff Road. Help them fill the Hummer to haul away hunger to benefit area food pantries. For a list of requested donations or for more information, please visit cityrm.org. City Hall and Public Works will be closed on Thursday, November 24th and Friday, November 25th in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday. Refuse collection will be delayed by 1 day, with Thursday routes to be collected on Friday and Friday routes to be collected on Saturday. As a reminder, the police department will be actively enforcing DUI and speeding violations during the holiday as part of the Thanksgiving Step campaign running through November 28th. On behalf of the City of Rolling Meadows staff, we wish everyone a festive and happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Sabo. That brings us to the second item, which is the financial report for the month of October. And just a reminder that the financials are in the packet, and if any member of the council has questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to Finance Director Molly Talkington for those. And this will bring us to our third item, which is back to Manager Sabo, and that's the December 6th City Council's draft agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. The draft agenda is included in tonight's agenda packet. A few items of note include the amendment of comprehensive codification amendments that is based on a review that was performed by the city's codifier as well as our city attorneys to do some code cleanup, as well as an amendment to the city code pertaining to parking prohibitions in certain locations near schools, specifically along Meadow Drive and Barker Avenue. This was based on a collective approach between the police department and the school district to help improve some of the traffic flow around the schools themselves. In addition, under resolutions, we'll have considerations of a 6B renewal for ATS automation, as well as consideration of a 7B related to the former Sam's Club property at 1460 to 1470 Golf Road for a proposed potential redevelopment of that site. The draft agenda, as I mentioned, is included in the agenda packet and will be posted in accordance with the Open Meetings Act prior to that meeting date. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Manager Sabo, for that draft agenda. And this will move us on to the matters that are not on the agenda. If there are matters that aren't on this evening's agenda, raise your hand. We'll discuss them. Alderman Veneziano.
Thank you. In light of tonight's discussion, I would like to request at a future committee of the whole meeting that we get information on our licensing procedures on the tobacco license. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can handle that. Any other matters that are not on this evening's agenda? Alderman Budmats.
And to augment that, if we could also discuss the whole vaping as part of tobacco.
Yeah.
I think we could see to that.
Thank you.
Any other matters not on this evening's agenda? if not, then I would like to wish everyone a safe and happy Thanksgiving coming up. And if you have the capabilities, find it in yourselves to donate food to those in need. And at this time, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Alderman Znoga. Thank you, Alderman Veneziano. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and this meeting is adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.